welcome to this edition of McGonigal's Chronicles, Making Montana Connections. I'm KRTV and KXLH anchor and producer Tim McGonigal. Very happy today to be joined by Grant Harville. And if you've spent any time with the Great Falls Symphony, going to some of the concerts, chances are you've seen Grant. Very animated up there, but that's perfect. I mean, I think that's perfect conductor.
It's my job.
That's your job. But I know this is also a kind of a bittersweet time for you because you've been with the Great Falls Symphony for 8 years, but
Year 8,
now you're moving on.
Yeah, it's my final one. My family is sort of settled in a different part of the world, and I'm going to be going and joining them after this season is over. So Great Falls has been really good to me, and the Symphony's been really good to me. But yeah, time for a new chapter.
All right. Well, it's been quite a ride for you, I know, not just in Great Falls, but for the whole life for you as well. Talk about your background. I was reading a little bit. You grew up in the Midwest, right?
I did. I'm a Wisconsin boy. I grew up on the Mississippi River. And then I sort of took a detour down south before coming up through Idaho and up here. But always been interested in music from a young age in some degree. Wasn't ever intending to be a conductor. It just sort of happened when they made me take a conducting class one day, and it's been my life ever since. Yeah, and then yeah, met a Canadian, got married, and going to be moving out to Victoria pretty soon. So yeah, been a ride.
Yeah, and so talk about that early music, getting influenced early on in life,
Sure.
and some of the early background and maybe the instruments that you played.
Right. So, you know, my parents were both singers and both sort of semi-professional musicians. My dad was our church choir director. My mom was a voice teacher. And we lived out in the middle of nowhere, at least by Wisconsin standards. Montana has way more nowhere than Wisconsin does. But you know, to the point where we didn't have a street address. Our street was unnamed and gravel and things like that. But we all took piano lessons, and we all sang and played some viola. I started getting really serious about the tuba, which was the instrument I played the most. And I always liked to compose, and I always liked to do all these different things. I liked music theory, music history, sort of the full batch of it. Again, as I say, conducting was never sort of in the cards until suddenly it very much was.
All right. Any early musical influences for you? Obviously your mom and dad, but who else was instrumental in your music?
Well, I think most people who pursue music as a career the way I did have some really good teachers, right? Playing a musical instrument is really, really, really hard. And to get over that initial hump takes someone that you can really sort of relate to. So fortunate to have, you know, a really good private teacher when I was in middle school. You know, early orchestra directors and band directors that I really liked. You know, you might not believe this, Tim, but when you carry around a tuba all day, it doesn't immediately make you the most popular kid in school, shockingly. So when you can find sort of the group of kids who are into what you're into and the teachers who really support you, that's always a nice kind of safe space of sorts for your interests.
Great. So you mentioned that the conducting part of it kind of came through a college class. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, as I say, you know, conducting, you do so many different things. There's so many skills that you need. You need to understand instruments. You need to be able to read scores and know how they sound just by looking at them. It's really good to know some history. It's really good to know music theory. And I was always interested in all of those things. I never sort of put together that conducting, I could do them all at once. And so, yeah, it was very much kind of an epiphany when I took that class. It's like, oh wait, this is what I should have been doing. This is what I was supposed to be doing all along in some sense. So it was, yeah, it was a half semester class that was required as part of my degree, and been sort of looking for a way to worm my way into that world ever since, and so far I've succeeded. Nobody's kicked me out. So.
Yeah, you mentioned that the conductor, it's not an easy job. I mean, we may watch it from the sidelines and say, he's just up there waving his arms and like pointing here and pointing there, but there's much more to it than that.
Yeah, well, it's a combination of different things, right? So you're sort of part coach, right? A lot of what you do is sort of preparing the team for the game, kind of thing. Once you're in the performance, you know, you get so much from the orchestra, right? And we shouldn't, as conductors, lie about this. It's not all about us, of course. But what they really need from you is for them to be allowed to be the best musicians they can be. And as a conductor, you can really, if you're not careful, sort of prevent that from happening. So I always describe it as you really want to match the energy that you want to receive. And humans are incredibly empathetic creatures. They will do what the people around them are doing almost automatically. So if you provide them with the energy that you want, you will almost certainly get that energy.
All right. So when you finally decided that maybe being a conductor would be the route you wanted to take, who were some of the conductors you looked at, or maybe tried to model yourself after,
Yeah,
or
that's
influence in that direction? I guess.
Right. I mean, we get asked that question a lot. You know, who your favorite conductor is and things like that. And it's weird because conductors look so different from each other. And you know, some of my favorites are ones that I would never want to be. Right. Mm-hmm. So famously, the sort of old school German guy, a guy named Furtwängler, he looks like sort of a reanimated corpse, sort of doing this kind of thing. And it's somehow brilliant and also nothing I would ever do. You know, Bernard Haitink is one that I really respect, both in the way he moves, but also the sort of decisions that he makes and things like that. But in a lot of ways, you know, everybody's body is different too. So I can't look like any other conductor automatically unless they happen to be, you know, some beefy 6'4" dude, you know. It's just kind of my lot in life. So, you know, every now and then you'll see a move by somebody that you really like. And of course, I have some really influential teachers as well, people who've really shaped, people who are probably not household names, but certainly have, if you know them and you know me, you can see their influence on me for sure.
Yeah, how about historically, going back in time, some of the conductors that you've studied, and who stands out there? I mean,
yeah, well, you know, certainly someone like Toscanini is really interesting, Arturo Toscanini, the Italian guy, because he was so famous and so sort of political, like he would get into fights with Mussolini and things like that. And as this kind of figure, this sort of icon, there's something kind of aspirational about that, where you know, someone who can genuinely have said to have made a difference that sort of exceeds what he did just by waving his arms. And you know, as a music director, you know, maybe on a much smaller scale, we are community leaders, right? And that matters. Mm-hmm. And you know, even if we are just focusing on what the symphony is doing, you know, I always say that symphony is a service organization. It is, it's like Habitat for Humanity. Sure. Our job is to make our communities better. We just happen to use music instead of build houses. And so just staying into that commitment is really important.
Yeah, you mentioned too music history, and one of the things that I've always been impressed by when I go to the Great Falls Symphony, and my wife and I have gone a lot in the last couple of years, mm-hmm. Is your knowledge of history. When you have maybe a theme for that night, and you kind of talk about you know, what's coming up, and I always feel like I come away not only enjoying the music and the performance, but also maybe learning a little bit more about history. So it's kind of a more bang for the buck, I guess. Right.
Well, you know, nothing emerges from a vacuum, of course, and you know, a lot of the music that we play is not necessarily automatically familiar to everybody at all times, right? You know, we do some of the big hits like Beethoven's Ninth and things like that, but anything that can give an audience kind of an inroad, you know, can get their ears open in the first place, give them something to hold on to this, you know, massive sound that's coming at them, which they might not be entirely familiar with. We don't want them sort of swimming without any sort of direction of where to go. So as much as you can put the piece in some sort of time and cultural context and things like that, I find that that's helpful for audiences. They can easier to engage with this piece, which again, they might be hearing for the first time.
Okay. As you look back on coming to Great Falls and to Montana, what was it about this job, this symphony, that kind of drew you in, sparked your interest?
Yeah. Well, again, I'm a northern boy at heart. I never had any qualms about sort of coming up here, although it's what is it right now, -14 or something like that. But you know, it was a place that you know, my predecessor Gordon Johnson, who is a lovely guy, had been here for a long time, and 30 years, and that's sort of a really good sign. It means that he's someone who had done a lot of work to make sure the symphony was part of the community and to build things and lay a really great foundation for things going into the future. And that was something that was really nice to see. It's sort of a reassuring thing. You know, if you're not cycling through music directors every few years, that's a good sign. And you know, you come in for your audition and you meet the people, and it either feels like it's a good place to be or it doesn't. And it felt like a good place to be.
All right. As you look back on 8 years, that's a long. I would imagine that's a long time in the as far as being a conductor. You know, you didn't come here and just like use this as a stepping stone, really. You've been here for the long haul. What are the memories that stand out for you?
Well, certainly some of the performances, you know, some of them are a little bit more personal than maybe people realize, and so it's sort of hard to describe a little bit. But man, that performance of Haydn's 104th Symphony is something that I'll never forget. You know, doing the show with Superman, the native rapper, fancy dancer, was a highlight for sure. A lot of them are sort of, they're probably made up of individual moments, but they feel like extended things. Choir is very important to me, and so I've worked a lot with the choir during my time here. Spent 4 years as the director of that group too, and getting to know those people and really sort of working towards a goal of becoming, you know, the choir we want to be has been a really important part for me. But yeah, it's one of these things that sort of feels cumulative in some sense. Where the individual moments start to sort of collect into these more gradual trends.
Okay. You mentioned too that being a conductor and a symphony is more than just the thing on Saturday night. It's a part of the community, and I know that education has been a big part of the Great Falls Symphony. You work a lot with the school district, and talk about the importance of education in your mind for when it comes to music and music education.
Yeah, I have sort of a weird little speech about this, but the very short version of it goes something like, when someone creates music, they are doing something that makes sense to them. And if you're doing something that makes sense to you, you are describing your own consciousness. And your consciousness is not something that is just something that exists within you. It is shaped by everything around you, from, you know, the very near, your own body and everything like that, to you, to this room, to this community, to the world, to the entire universe. So if you put all that together, you get every musical composition, every song, from what you hear on the radio to any symphony ever, is a philosophical statement. It is a statement about how humanity exists in the universe. And so in terms of education, every time someone learns a piece, they are discovering a new way of looking at the world. They are seeing it through the lens of that particular composer or performer or something like that. And so the best way to know a piece, to really, really know it, to sort of embody it, is to perform it. And so for music education, as much as we can get instruments in hands, that's what you're doing. You are giving kids an opportunity to understand the world in a million different ways, that in the sort of truest and most kind of complete way, by having them be so intimately connected with the music that is sort of a part of them through the physical process of playing it. So listening to music is so important. I always think of it, especially for kids, as being kind of the first step that we want. When we do our children's shows, so we do 3 of them a year, you know, my goal is, I think it's Maya Angelou. She has a quote that's, they'll forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And when we bring kids in, I always want them to remember the feeling of it more than the actual facts. So we don't stand up and say, you know, Beethoven was born in 1770, that kind of thing. It's more about making sure that they have such a great experience that they know that music is a place that they can come to, that the symphony is a place they can come to. And if they have that feeling, then it will inspire them to want to be part of that process as a performer, not just as a listener.
Yeah, have you ever had any moments where maybe a kid, you see a light go on in their head and say that this is for me?
Yeah, I've certainly had a few, students and things like that come up to me with some very complimentary things about, how, I wasn't sure if this was the path I wanted to go, but having this experience now, I know that this is the path I want to go. After our concerts, if I can, after our youth concerts, I'll wander out into the audience because it takes a long time for them to leave.
Sure.
Hundreds of kids, and they need to leave school by school and things like that. So you just go out there and talk to them and ask them how they're feeling and how the concert went, and you get all sorts of answers and you get all sorts of misbehavior, but that's the fun part.
Yeah.
So.
When you, Great Falls Symphony, or maybe other symphonies too, when they kind of plan out their season or plan out their shows, is it up to you to come up with the theme, or is that maybe a collaborative effort between you and the other symphony members? Or
very, very collaborative. We have a committee. Okay. And because there's lots of different things we have to think about, and we need to make sure not to forget them. So, as I say, we have an affiliated choir, and we need to make sure that they're placed on our season the right way. We have musicians who are interested in playing certain things. We have administrators and board members who care about whether we are within budget and things like that. And so there's a lot of sort of moving parts that fit into this. Different parts of the community we might want to be reaching, and giving a nice sort of flow to the season where they don't all sound the same, that kind of thing. So there's so many different considerations at play that having all of those different perspectives is important.
All right. During your time as conductor of the Great Falls Symphony, you had to go through like everybody, the 2020 pandemic, and talk about the challenges that presented, because you guys moved through it. You didn't have maybe as the full audience shows, but you still did the performance.
Yeah, so 2020 in particular, we knew that we could put on a season, we could announce one, we could sell tickets for it and things like that, but we always knew that at any given moment something could get canceled, or the audience size could change and things like that. And so instead of dealing with this thing where we sold a bunch of tickets and then maybe had to refund them, we just decided to make them all free. And people could just sign up for a ticket, and then we just sort of asked the community to help us through that, and they did. It was a really nice thing to see that kind of support come through. People supporting us even though it wasn't through ticket sales, things like that. So I think the bigger challenge, I think, for many of us coming out of it is, once you're doing this thing where it's a lot of smaller audiences, a lot more remote things, how do we get people back in? And I think we're starting to see that this year in particular, we are getting the people back, and we're starting to see the audience sizes that we had beforehand.
Okay. Music and the music that you conduct with the Great Falls Symphony, again, it's so historic. It's not just American music, but it's worldwide in many instances, from France and from Italy and Germany and some of these places. And how many languages do you speak?
Fluent. So if you fluently, I'd say one.
Okay.
If you drop me down in the middle of a village in France or Germany, I probably wouldn't starve. Okay. It might take a long time and be sort of complicated and awkward, but I could make my way through in those two languages in particular.
Yeah.
But it is a very sort of we cover probably 300 to 400 years of music, spanning not just Europe and North America, but all the Americas and out to Asia and things like that too. So it's a really wide variety of, again, sort of cultural contexts that I was talking about before. And that's actually part of the beauty of what we do. Most artists, great artists, they have their genre and they stick to it, and we're not obliged to do that. So we can sort of explore. Symphony is very versatile in this regard. Yeah.
Hillary Shepard, the executive director, told me an interesting story, and I hope I can share this with you, but she said to help you understand some of these languages, you have an interesting method that involves video games.
Oh, well, sometimes I play them on other languages. Is that what she's referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's one way of practicing, I suppose. It's a little bit different from Duolingo, although you do learn some odd jargon, right? You don't necessarily need to learn the word for, flamethrower in other languages for your day-to-day life, but yeah, it is sort of a handy thing sometimes, and I do enjoy games. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, as the Great Falls Symphony looking for a new conductor, and they told me that they had like 230 applicants. Were you surprised at that amount of?
No, not particularly. Conducting is a competitive field, and definitely lots of people out there looking for gigs, and so. 230 is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have been surprised by 150 either, but the fact that it's a big number didn't surprise me at all. And it's, yeah, I think it's just a testament to a lot of the things we've done and the kind of opportunity that this shows itself to be for the conducting world.
Sure, and it's got to make you feel good too, because you've been in charge of this for 8 years,
Mm-hmm.
and the things that you've accomplished, and despite the pandemic and stuff like that. But like you said, people are starting to come back, and it's obviously a pretty sought after position when it comes open.
Well, and I think as someone who has sort of been on the other side of it, one thing you look at is what are they doing in their current season, because that's the information you have most available to you. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the things that we're doing this year, as my sort of final year, as I say, I'm not the only one who chooses this stuff, but it's also a lot of things that do have a lot of personal significance to me, and a lot of music that I'm really interested in, and I think a lot of other conductors share that. So, pieces like Mozart's Symphony No. 40, which we did in the fall, pieces like Scheherazade coming up later, and Mahler 2, Mahler's Second Symphony coming up. I think those are pieces that conductors like doing. So when they see those on your season, they say, oh, maybe this is a place that I want to be.
Okay. As they continue their search, what advice would you have for whoever is ultimately selected for this position? What would you say to them?
Yeah, dive in with both feet, both arms, your head, and every other part of your body. It's a place that wants to do good. It's a place where the community is not fake, in the sense of there are a lot of places out there with much larger populations that don't feel as much like a community. And it's there are disadvantages for us being where we are, being on this little island in sort of north central Montana. Mm-hmm. But the advantage of it is that Great Falls is a real place. And you don't have to pretend that the symphony is a community ensemble. It absolutely is. And so really embrace that and lean into that. That is wholly to your advantage as the new music director, to take advantage of that, the interest that this community has for making its own community better.
And as you move on to this next chapter in your life, what will you do? I mean, will you be conducting a symphony in Victoria?
Yeah, so I've started working with a group in Victoria, a volunteer orchestra out there, and a couple other things, sort of one-off type things that come up as well. I'm also just hanging out with my kid, so a lot of that.
Yeah, and your wife is involved in music too, right?
She is. She works for the opera company out in Victoria. She's a pianist, and so a lot of her job is she's a repetiteur, that's the fancy word. So in opera, they'll have weeks of rehearsals for a lot of these shows. Just opera is complicated, and so they don't hire the orchestra the entire time. That's an astonishing amount of money to do that. Mm-hmm. So they hire her instead, and she plays for all of their rehearsals when they need music.
All right. So it sounds like your child will be involved in music somehow or another. Maybe he already is.
Yeah, I don't. It's sort of this thing, whether we want her to sort of pursue that as a career or something like that. That's not so important to us. But it's one of these things that just sort of happens by accident. She's surrounded by music, so she sings a lot and stuff like that, even without us really trying to make that happen.
Yeah. Do you think you'll ever come back to Great Falls and check out the symphony performances?
Well, if they invite me, yeah, happily return. To see the people, that would be the big reason to return.
Yeah, I know you've made friends, obviously, with some of the symphony members and some of the folks close to the symphony, but being 8 years in a place with all the people that have come through, you've probably made some great relationships.
Yeah, yeah. And, it's been complicated, right? For a couple of years in the middle where, we couldn't talk to anybody and things like that. So it's been a little bit sort of disjointed, I might say, but in the larger sense, yeah, absolutely. These are, people that I met at my audition that I still talk to today.
All right. Well, thank you so much for all you've done for the symphony and the community too, and we wish you best of luck in the future with the family and with all the other musical endeavors that lie ahead.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tim.
From the people he has answered to, like Symphony Executive Director Hilary Shepard, to the performers he's directed, like trumpet player Dusty Molyneux, Harville leaves a lasting impression.
Grant is one of the finest human beings I've ever met. He's brutally honest in all the things that he does, and he holds himself accountable to very, very high standards. He's one of the most brilliant musicians I've ever met, and for those of you who may not know, I'm also a musician with an advanced degree, but next to Grant, you wouldn't even know it at all. So he's just that good, and
he's raised the level of musicianship in the orchestra quite a bit. He's very demanding, but not in a negative way, but just his expectations are very high. The efficiency of his rehearsals, we just were able to get so much done in very little time. He's just super knowledgeable about everything that he does, and so all of the decisions that he makes musically are really inspiring to the orchestra and why we do things a way that we do. And then
one of the things that I really appreciate about him that he brought with him to Great Falls was this desire to build out our infrastructure. So we worked a lot internally with processes and with policy so that it can be easier for the next generation of music director to stand on his shoulders, essentially, and really take off. So I'm going to miss him a lot. He's very funny, and he's, like I said, he's just brilliant.
another thing that a lot of people don't realize about Grant is that he is a very talented composer. So he did a lot of arranging and transcriptions and things like that for the orchestra. So if we didn't have the music for it, it wasn't necessarily a stumbling block. Grant could just figure out how to write it out for us.
You've been listening to a conversation with Great Falls Symphony conductor Grant Harville, who leaves the position after 8 years in order to spend more time with his family in British Columbia. As for his replacement, 6 finalist candidates have been chosen, and each will get a chance to lead a symphony performance for the 2025-26 season before that permanent replacement is named. Remember to subscribe to and rate this podcast and follow it on social media, and feel free to leave guest suggestions. I'll be back soon with another guest with a Montana connection. Until then, from McGonigal's Chronicles Making Montana Connections, I'm Tim McGonigal.